Hi, Chad Lang here. I'm going to be taking a break from reading Recovering Agency, Lifting the Veil of Mormon Mind Control. That video will be airing shortly. But in this video, I want to talk about South Park, the Book of Mormon musical, Family Guy, and Fallout 4, and The Simpsons. So what does any of that have to do with Mormonism? I've read a lot of reviews from Mormon defenders on things like the Book of Mormon musical and other portrayals of Mormonism and Mormons on TV, and they really do not like the stereotypes being portrayed. However, in my experience in Alberta, or in any congregation that is at the ward level when it comes to the population of the congregation, branches are small, wards are big, I have found that the South Park All About Mormons, or when Saddam Hussein goes to heaven and there's a bunch of Mormons there and they're like, we're going to watch a play about how it hurts deep inside to tell a little lie. And he's like, ah, and they're like, don't forget you're here forever. And yeah, that would be hell for him. And it would be hell for me too, actually. So I find that stereotype, that portrayal, to be largely accurate. And so right there, a lot of LDS people and church people in general are going to be very offended about what I'm about to say in this video, because I find that stereotype to be largely accurate. So, to illustrate, I'm going to be describing a bunch of different people from a bunch of different churches who have this, what I call the cult pseudo personality. And Luna Lindsay has a chapter about that in her book, Recovering Agency, Lifting the Veil of Mormon Mind Control. There was a gentleman, a missionary, and I find a lot of missionaries have this type of personality. When I first moved to Calgary, he's talking to me. I think he was from New Zealand or something like that. We barely know each other. He just knows that I'm a member of the church, and there's like practically no icebreakers. And right off the bat, he starts pontificating about making sacrifices to God. And, well, would you sacrifice your wife? But God gave you your wife. And the way he's talking, his voice inflections, the way he's enunciating his words, the way he's going into it in general, I can just tell by the way he's speaking is that you are so inculcated into the church culture and the church rhetoric that you have absolutely no idea what anybody else on planet Earth thinks, do you? And you are completely incapable of talking like a normal person, aren't you? You are just so glued in that you have no clue or concept. Of course, I didn't say that because I would get in a lot of trouble if I were to say things like that, so I kept my mouth shut for most of my life. But really, with everything that's gone on, I almost wish I could go back in time, especially with what I know now about Joseph Smith asking people to sacrifice their wives to him. And in some cases, we have good reason to believe there may have been some jiggy going on. What he thought about that, or what he thinks about that. Would you give Joseph Smith your wife and let him show her the way to the celestial kingdom? Anyways, this is the type of personality that he has. And it seems to me that this is the type of personality that either gravitates towards churches like that, or this is the type of personality that churches like that generate. There was another young man when I was a younger man, in my early 20s. I was doing a bunch of temping, and I think I was testing oil fields. I forget what it was, but you dunk this stuff in water and you plug it in and you see if it works or doesn't work. And again, he's very quiet, very mild-mannered, very, leave it to Beaver, Andy Griffith Show style human being, starts talking to us about religion. And he's like, I was like this cup. My life was empty, like this cup is empty. But then when I found God, my life was full. And it's just like, again, you have no concept of what the rest of us think. And I'm thinking back to Fallout 4, where Piper's sister Nat says to the sole survivor, golly gee, mister, you're just a little lost lamb in a den full of wolves, aren't you? That's his personality, And there is another gentleman at another company that I work. This is all in my early 20s. Another church, the gospel's like my nose. I can't live without my nose. I need my... And again, it's like, you're a little lost lamb in a den full of wolves, aren't you, mister? And I have found in my observation and my experience, every time that I have lived in Alberta, as I've moved back and forth between British Columbia and Alberta, that 90% of the males in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are this type of individual. That's why I call it the cult pseudo-personality, because I'm not sure if it's their real personality. I've seen a lot of young men in the YSA trying so hard to emulate the characteristics of the general authorities when they speak, and pontificating on the pulpit of things like the general authorities have a sense of humor, a polite chuckle sense, not a loud laughter sense, because loud laughter is breaking your temple covenants. Not that anyone says that part, but a polite chuckle sense. And it's like, this is the only way to be. This is the only style of human being that God accepts. This is how you become more like your Heavenly Father, by being a very quiet, very mild-mannered, very, you are a character in the Andy Griffith Show, and you have leapt out of the television screen, and now you're in reality. This is what I largely see. And not only that, this is why it's a problem. Okay? When you have a majority membership that fits this stereotype, a stereotype that you're trying to deny publicly, the expectation becomes that when someone like me shows any interest in the gospel, this is now the personality I'm expected to adopt as a measure of my conversion. And if I'm not adopting that, then I'm not accepting the gospel. No, you cannot be like Dog the Bounty Hunter and be on better moral behavior in this church. You have to be Ned Flanders. You have to be that person. And the people who are that person don't understand why you're not that person. And if you're not being that person, you're not accepting the gospel. That has largely been my experience. And I'm not impressed. And I find it difficult. You tell me that the gospel's for everybody. Ned Flanders tells me that the gospel's for everybody. And then you want me to proselytize to everybody that I know, tell them this is the greatest place on planet Earth. This is the greatest rationale. Be here. Most of my friends are heavy metal friends. And they are not interested in religion. And I don't blame them. I understand their position. You want me to tell them this is the place where they should be in order to make themselves available for Jesus Christ's forgiveness. And I'm having trouble reconciling why I even want to be here. I feel that I'm being asked to be a different person because you do not respect the person that I am. It's like, I'm glad that I found James Hetfield when I was 14 or 15 years old, and I heard Blackened by Metallica for the first time. Blackened is the end. Yeah, oh yeah, I sing Metallica karaoke, by the way. So there's your little taste right there. And I've sung that one too. Like, James Hetfield helped me find my balls. Okay. You expect me to transform myself into this mild-mannered, church-going, Ned Flanders, Leave It to Beaver Mormon, and you do not understand why I would be interested in anything else, or why I'm not interested in that at all. You can't understand why anyone else on planet Earth is not interested in that at all, when most people on planet Earth are looking at you going, you're a little lost lamb in a den full of wolves, aren't you, mister? You are a character straight out of the black and white TV show Dennis the Menace. You come across as incredibly naive and very easy to fleece. Now, I was bullied. I was bullied from grade 1 through grade 11 because I was a nice kid, because I was quiet, because I was shy, and because I was an easy target. I am not interested in being that person ever again. So people might see the potential for it, but I am not interested in discovering my inner Ned Flanders, embracing that, and going forward in the gospel, being this human being from this day forward. That is not the new creature that I'm interested in becoming. And the people who are that person expect me to be that person if I show any interest in the gospel whatsoever. I have to shut them down immediately. You give it an inch, and they try to take a mile. I was talking to the missionaries again in 2010. I've talked to a lot of missionaries, okay, and I forget what I was talking about, but I used the phrase, I'm afraid, after whatever it was I was talking about. They're like, you're afraid? It's a figure of speech. Like, they just do not understand the social dynamics or thought process of anybody outside their church, anybody outside their fantasy world of Pleasantville. They probably never watched the movie Pleasantville and would be highly offended if they did, especially with Reese Witherspoon screwing every guy in town. They fit the stereotype. And then defenders of the church will publicly try to deny that that stereotype exists. And I've only been expected to adopt that stereotype as a measure of my conversion. And I'm not impressed. So I wasn't sure where I was going with this, but in my experience, the stereotype largely fits. Okay, I want to show you a picture. We're going to talk about the movie Mobsters and Mormons. This guy right here. I'm not talking about the actor. I'm talking about the character he portrays. William James, I believe it is, who's the neighbor of Ray Cheeseman, who's in the Witness Protection Program and goes to Utah. His neighbor is the picture that I showed you, and he is an anti-cola drinking, Leave It to Beaver, Ned Flanders religious nutbag. And it's not like there's only one or two people in the church like this. 90%. In Calgary, in Alberta, 90%. Maybe not in Prince Rupert, where it's a tiny little town of 3 to 5 active families. Yeah, you can be more of a normal person who's just trying to use the gospel to be on good moral behavior. No, in Alberta and in certain areas of Utah, you are expected to be William James as a measure of your conversion. And if you're not, you are in incredible danger of the hellfire. That is the attitude. And anyone who tries to tell you it isn't is either a liar or completely oblivious. And there are plenty of people who are completely oblivious as well. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say about that. Most people in the church are that man. Most men. I'm not going to talk about the women. That's another matter altogether. That'll probably get me in even more trouble. But I'm not impressed there either. Like, when I was in the YSA for 9 years, I wasn't really interested in dating anybody in those congregations because I don't like those people. Because I'm not interested in being like those people. Because I don't think what those people think about life in the world. And I'm not interested in expressing myself the way they express themselves. Okay, if the gospel really was for everybody, you wouldn't be expecting everybody to transform themselves into that style of Mormon, saying everything that you're saying about life in the world, or they're subscribing too much to the doctrines of man. Who talks like that, by the way, besides Thomas S. Monson or Gordon B. Hinckley? Who talks like that? The doctrines of man. This is how these guys talk. Okay. Yeah. So basically that's what I want to say. It's one thing to ask people to be on better moral behavior, but if that is the primary example that is set, people in the world look at that and they're like, I don't want to be like that. Is this the kind of person that the church produces? Is the entire goal of the church to generate and create and proselytize and evangelize Mr. Rogers personality clones? Is that a fair question? Because when you have a majority membership that's like that, this is what people outside the group think. Gee whiz, you're a little lost lamb in a den full of wolves, mister. Well, they're not a little lost lamb in a den full of wolves in their church environment. They're a little lost lamb in a den full of sheeple. A den full of sheeple who get positively reinforced when it comes to that personality type in an echo chamber where their views aren't really challenged. And when their views are challenged in the outside of the world, there's a persecution narrative where they're persecuting me for my beliefs, you know, and it's just like, no, you do come across as incredibly naive and is incredibly easy to fleece, and I don't want to be like you. Okay? That's all there is to it. Now, if that's who you are, then that's who you are. If that is your real personality, then that is your real personality. I was in Toronto, and I was asking a guy for directions on how to get to the airport, and you take a risk when you're doing that. And I don't know what his background was, but he was very eccentric. Leave it to Beaver Dingbat. The Go Bus. I'm glad he gave me directions. I probably would have missed my flight if he didn't help me, so I'm grateful. Like, if the church helps you, if that's what helps you circumnavigate life in the world, and that's your safe space, and that safe space helps you thrive and be a happy married man with children who is a successful, law-abiding member of society, then that's probably a good thing. But is it for everybody? Is it for the biker? Is it for the metalhead? Is it for the liberal who's going to vote NDP? And in my experience, the answer is no. Those people get driven out. So, I'm Chad Lang. You can say whatever you want about that. I'm sure if there's a lot of Mormons watching this, I'm going to have a lot of nasty comments. Enjoy your church.